I saw him just 10 feet away. His dark eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I knew I was screwed. I've worked in these woods for years. I know every trail, every bend in the river, every damn tree that looks like another. This wasn't my first encounter with wildlife. Deer, foxes, even the occasional wolf, I knew how to handle them. But a bear? A full-grown grizzly standing between me and the only safe way out? That was something else entirely. The day had started like any other. Spring was finally in full force, the last of the cold nights fading. I was out checking the trails, making sure the recent storm hadn't brought down any trees. Birds chirped, the wind rustled the branches, and the air smelled of damp earth and fresh greenery. Peaceful. Then everything stopped. No birds, no wind, just silence. And that's when my gut clenched. Something was off. I turned my head slowly, and there he was, this massive beast, standing between the trees watching me. His fur was matted, damp from the morning dew. His claws, long and thick, dug slightly into the earth as he shifted his weight. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I knew better. Running meant death. A grizzly could outrun a horse, and I was no horse. Instead, I held my ground, my mind racing for a way out. Then he took a step forward. Not a charge, not yet, but a deliberate, heavy step. I tried to make myself look bigger, standing tall, arms slightly out. My bear spray was clipped to my belt, but reaching for it now would be suicide. The wrong move, and I was done. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady, low. Easy, big guy. He didn't care. Another step. Closer. I could see the dried mud on his snout, the scars along his shoulder. This wasn't some passive wanderer. This was a fighter, and he had decided I was in his way. My heart pounded so hard I swore he could hear it. I knew one thing for sure: I had seconds to decide. And whatever I chose, it had to be right. I took a slow step back, keeping my eyes locked on the bear. My breath was shallow, my fingers twitching near the canister of bear spray on my belt. If I moved too fast, he'd lunge. If I turned my back, I was dead. Another step back. The bear huffed, his massive chest expanding. He wasn't bluffing. He was gauging me, deciding if I was worth the effort. I reached for the bear spray, my fingers fumbling. The canister was cold, slightly damp from the morning air. One smooth motion, that's all I needed. Just unclip it, aim, and fire. I pressed the trigger. A sharp hiss, and a gust of wind slapped the mist right back into my face. My throat burned instantly, my eyes fire. I staggered, coughing, blinking furiously. I could barely see, barely think. Then I heard it, a deep, guttural growl. The bear was coming. I stumbled, barely regaining balance before something massive slammed into me. It was like getting hit by a truck. My body lifted off the ground, spun, then crashed hard against the dirt. Pain shot up my ribs, my back. The world tilted. My head throbbed. I tried to push myself up, but my left arm screamed in protest. I couldn't tell if it was broken or just bruised to hell. It didn't matter. I had to move, but the bear didn't finish me. Not yet. Through blurred vision, I saw him, just a few feet away, breathing heavy, watching. His eyes weren't wild, weren't rabid. He wasn't killing for sport. He was waiting. For what? I didn't know. But if I stayed down, I wouldn't live long enough to find out. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Every survival instinct in me screamed to run, to fight, to do something. But I knew better. I'd read about this. If a grizzly thinks you're no longer a threat, sometimes, just sometimes, they walk away. So I played dead. The bear sniffed at me, his breath hot and thick with the scent of damp earth and something foul. His snout brushed my shoulder, my ribs. I felt every exhale against my skin. My heart pounded so hard I swore he could hear it. Then came another hit. Not a full-force swipe like before, but a rough shove, flipping me halfway onto my side. I bit down a groan, forcing my body to stay limp. If I so much as twitched, I was done. He growled low, deep, a sound that rattled in his chest, testing me, waiting. I could feel his eyes on me, studying, thinking. Then something shifted. His posture changed. Less aggressive, more uncertain. His breathing slowed, his growls softened. And then he stepped back. One slow, heavy step, then another. I risked opening my eyes just a fraction. He was turning away. I didn't understand it. He could have killed me easily. He should have. But instead, he walked. Just like that. No warning. No reason. I lay there, still as a corpse, until the sound of his heavy footfalls faded into the trees. Only then did I exhale. Only then did I dare to believe I was still alive. Pain pulsed through every inch of my body, but I didn't dare move. My ribs ached, my arm throbbed, and my lungs burned from the bear spray. But none of that mattered. Not yet. I listened, focused on every sound, every shift in the trees. The bear had vanished into the forest, but that didn't mean he was gone. He could still be watching, waiting. Minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 10. My muscles screamed, stiff from lying in the dirt, but I forced myself to stay still. I had to be sure. Then silence. A different kind this time. Not the suffocating, unnatural quiet from before. Just the regular stillness of the woods. Birds chirped again. The wind rustled through the branches. The world was waking up, and that meant the danger had likely passed. I exhaled, slow and careful, then shifted just an inch. No reaction. Another inch. Still nothing. I had to move. Staying here meant dying, either from my injuries or if the bear changed his mind. Gritting my teeth, I rolled onto my side and started crawling. Each push forward was agony, but I didn't stop. 1 yard. Another. Then I heard it. A rustle. Not heavy, not like before, but close. Too close. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze, gripping the dirt, forcing myself not to panic. Was he back? Had he been waiting for me to move? I turned my head slowly toward the sound. Every nerve in my body braced for the worst. But it wasn't the bear. It was something smaller. A dark shape moving between the trees, unsteady, almost clumsy. A cub. My breath caught in my throat. It was young, too young to be alone. It stumbled forward, its tiny legs shaky, its fur damp and matted. And then I saw it. One of its front paws was twisted at an unnatural angle. Injured, helpless, and completely alone. A chill crawled up my spine. The bear hadn't attacked me just out of instinct or hunger. She had been protecting her cub. The cub let out a weak, high-pitched whimper. It was a sound that sent a strange pang through my chest. Fear, pity, maybe even guilt. It struggled to move, dragging its injured paw awkwardly across the forest floor. Every attempt made it squeak in pain. My throat tightened. I wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't my territory. It was theirs. And now, seeing the cub in this state, I finally understood why the mother bear had attacked me. She wasn't hunting. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. She saw me as a threat to her injured cub. And maybe, just maybe, when she looked at me lying there in the dirt, battered and broken, she saw something else. Something that convinced her to walk away instead of finishing me off. I swallowed hard, my body still aching. Every instinct told me to get the hell out of here. This wasn't my problem. Nature was cruel, but it was balanced. The cub's fate wasn't mine to decide. And yet, I couldn't look away. The little thing tried again to stand, only to collapse into a pitiful heap. My fingers twitched. My breath came shallow. I had a choice to make. I could leave. I could pretend I never saw it, limp my way back to safety, and let the wilderness do what it always did. Or I could do something really, really stupid. I clenched my jaw, staring at the cub, then toward the trees where its mother had vanished. If she came back and found me near her baby, there wouldn't be a second chance. She'd tear me apart without hesitation. But the cub whimpered again, its small body trembling, and my decision was made before I could stop myself. I inched forward, ignoring the screaming pain in my ribs. "Easy, little guy," I murmured, reaching out. "I'm not gonna hurt you." My hand hovered inches away from its fragile frame, and for a moment, the world held its breath. Everything in me screamed to leave. My body ached, my ribs throbbed, and my head was still spinning. But I couldn't ignore the cub. It wasn't just hurt. It was helpless, stranded, and I knew, deep down, that if I walked away, it wouldn't survive. I hesitated, breathing through the pain. A memory surfaced, uninvited. I was 8 years old, running through the woods near my grandfather's cabin. I tripped, fell hard. My leg twisted beneath me. I cried out, scared, lost, thinking no one would come. But someone did. My grandfather had found me, his rough hands lifting me with ease. "Stay still, kid," he'd said. "I got you." Now, looking at the cub, I heard those same words echoing in my head. I exhaled sharply. Screw it. I wasn't leaving it here. Moving was agony, but I forced myself to get closer. The cub flinched, letting out a weak growl. Its dark eyes locked onto mine, filled with pain and confusion. It didn't trust me. Why would it? "I know, little guy," I murmured. "I wouldn't trust me either." Slowly, carefully, I extended my hands. The cub tensed, ears flattening, but it was too weak to fight. I slid my hands beneath its small frame, lifting as gently as I could. The moment I moved its injured leg, it let out a sharp cry. My gut twisted. I know," I whispered. "I'm sorry, but we gotta get you out of here." Every second felt like a gamble. The mother could return at any moment, and if she saw me carrying her cub, there wouldn't be a second chance. I struggled to my feet, swaying under the weight. Not because the cub was heavy, but because my own body was barely holding together. I had to move, fast, one step, then another. I didn't know where I was going, or what the hell I was going to do next. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't leaving this cub behind. I moved as quickly as my battered body would allow, cradling the cub against my chest. Every step sent a fresh wave of pain through my ribs, but I didn't stop. I had to find a safe spot, somewhere away from where the mother had last been. The cub whimpered in my arms, its small body trembling. "I know, buddy," I muttered through clenched teeth. "I know it hurts. Just hang on." I spotted a fallen tree up ahead, its thick trunk partially hollowed out. It wasn't perfect, but it was cover. I crouched, lowering the cub as gently as I could. It let out a weak protest but didn't fight me. "Stay here, just for a second," I whispered, not even sure why I was talking to it. Maybe to calm myself more than anything. Then snap, a branch. Behind me, I turned my head slowly, my entire body seizing with dread. My worst fear had just come true. She was back. The mother bear stood a dozen feet away, massive and terrifying. Her deep brown eyes locked onto me, and I knew, if she decided to charge, I wouldn't survive. Not this time. My hands went up instinctively, palms open, fingers spread. "I'm not here to hurt him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My pulse thundered in my ears. He was hurt. I was just helping. She didn't move. Her breathing was deep and steady, her nostrils flaring. Her gaze flicked to the cub, then back to me. I held my breath. This was it. I had seconds before she made her choice. Then something changed. She didn't charge. She didn't growl. She just stood there. The tension in the air was suffocating. I stayed frozen, waiting for the inevitable. But it never came. Slowly, the bear stepped forward. Not toward me, but toward her cub. She moved past me, close enough that I could see the scars on her thick fur, close enough to feel the weight of her presence. She nudged the cub with her nose, a soft, almost gentle motion. The cub let out a weak cry, pressing into her. And just like that, it was over. She had come back for her baby, and for some reason, she had let me live. The mother bear didn't lunge. She didn't growl. She didn't rip me apart like every instinct in my body told me she would. Instead, she focused entirely on her cub. She lowered her massive head, nudging it gently. The cub whimpered, but this time, it wasn't in pain. It was something softer, something familiar. The way she moved, the way she checked it over, it was almost human. Like a mother running her hands over a child to make sure they were still in one piece. I stood there, frozen, still holding my breath. I wasn't sure if I should move. I wasn't sure if I even could. Then, she looked at me. Not the way an animal looks at prey. Not even the way a predator sizes up a threat. It was something else entirely. A pause. A hesitation. A decision. We held each other's gaze for a long moment, the air between us thick with something I couldn't name. And then, slowly, I took a step back. She didn't react, didn't tense, didn't so much as twitch. Another step, then another. I never turned my back, never made a sudden move. I just kept stepping away, putting distance between us. And still, she only watched. When I finally reached the treeline, my hands shaking, my breath uneven, I paused. She was still there, still staring. Then, just as slowly, she turned back to her cub. That was it. No charge, no warning, no final test. She had made her choice. I had made mine. I don't know what that moment was. I don't know why she let me live, why she didn't see me as a threat anymore. Maybe it was nothing. Just coincidence. Just an animal following instincts I'll never fully understand. Or maybe, for the briefest second, she saw me the same way I saw her. Not as a monster, not as a killer, just as something trying to survive.